Right. Hi there, good morning. Kelvin MacKenzie here, action-packed show as you might expect. Look, let me have a bit of a rant when I start. I don't know whether you've been following the Professor Arday story at all. So Professor Arday, sociology professor at Cambridge, brilliant guy, I think he's 41, a PhD, he's got more letters after his name than in his name, an extraordinary man. And one of the great kind of figures for the black community and for all of those that are very pleased that there are people making their way in the world who haven't had, remember that word privilege? Yeah, the privilege, right, he didn't have the privilege. Okay, and then people started looking at some aspects of his CV. So he got his PhD, and when the analysis of the actual written words of the PhD, they began having a look at them, and they bore a startling resemblance to somebody else's PhD. I.e., there were a couple of people, I think there was one particular, in which the words were exactly the same, but hadn't been totally attributed. Now, if you don't attribute it, then people might think that actually you hadn't done any work and you'd done the kind of thing that I do, which is simply lift it, right? So when I was in the editing business, great job, by the way. Everybody should be the editor of the Sun for at least a year, honestly. You'd have so much fun, honestly. It is literally all shagging and alcohol, and you're getting paid as well. An astonishing job. And anybody who tells you otherwise is a liar. The idea that you're all sitting there with some frown saying, I tell you what, I'm very worried about the new act going through Parliament. Get real, okay? And if the word NATO or Ulster appears on the front page, expect a collapse in circulation. If, however, there's a rather shapely lady who seems to be entertaining a rather famous person that she's not married to, then that is what actually everybody gets up for, right? It's fantastic. Anyway, that was a brief segue into it. Anyway, so this guy has a load of stuff in there which seems to have appeared word for word somewhere else. Now, that was the beginning of the investigation into his CV. His CV is a shocker, I'm afraid. So he says things like, he ran 600 miles in 6 days. No, I don't think he did. It says that he raised 5.5 million for charity. No, I don't think he did. He said he went on a project to dig wells for WaterAid. WaterAid, I think, was a great idea for charity. And then WaterAid turned around and said, we don't send our activists and charity chuggers abroad at all. It's a specific part of our mandate. We don't do that. And then he said that he had been a visiting professor in Ohio. No, he didn't. And then finally, he said that he had been, I think, some kind of professor up in Glasgow. No. This is important stuff. The next thing that happens is that he somehow seems to hire Carter Ruck. Now, Carter Ruck, as you might expect with the word ruck at the end of it, normally gets given another name. Anyway, they're expensive kind of lawyers, kind of average ho-hum kind of lawyers. He starts, I think their job was to kind of write to media companies and say to them, that's not true, this is not true, and all the rest of it. I mean, how they feel about their client today, I'm not sure. I think that they were doing it. I think you'll find that it'll be kind of pro bono or pro bonco, as it's known more regularly. Anyway, much more, it took a rather serious turn last night. The Daily Telegraph and the Times revealed that a reporter from the Times Education Supplement had been onto this plagiarism row some months ago and had sent a series of questions to Professor Arday. Now, the following happened. Didn't get a reply. About 3 months later, he gets a phone call from Scotland Yard officer. Write this down. A phone call from Scotland Yard officer, which says they've been investigating. This is unknown to him. He was never alerted to it, and he could have had the full power of News Corporation behind him, which is enormously powerful, by the way. Enormously powerful. You should have the Free Speech Union behind you. That would be helpful. Anyway, he gets told by this officer by phone that they won't be pursuing him for harassment. He said, well, I didn't know anything about it anyway. They said, well, we're not doing that. However, don't send any more questions to Professor Arday because it will affect his mental health. Is this a joke? This guy is a prominent Cambridge professor facing scrutiny over whether he attained his PhD and other aspects to his CV correctly. It is the job of a journalist to get to the bottom of this stuff. Otherwise, we would end up having God knows who running our academic institutions. This is a disgrace to Cambridge. Cambridge should carry out a formal investigation and stop trying to support Professor Arday in this matter. And further, Cambridge should announce that they are in favour of journalism and they're in favour of their academics being investigated if it's felt that everything may not be kosher. So here we are. We have crime galore in our country. Even if we didn't have crime galore, what right can Scotland Yard honestly say they have to investigate a Times Education supplement? Have you ever seen the Times Education supplement? Can you imagine what kind of reporter they have? They don't have some tabloid tosspot like me who enjoys causing the problem. They have deep, deep research from many, many years of experience. This guy is suddenly accused after the event, and not true, of harassment. How incredible. Why would you do that, Scotland Yard? Who sanctioned this? And who sanctioned the idiot to turn up to tell this is by phone, some workaday journalist trying to do their best to find out what is the reality of this alleged professor, to be told that these simple questions are causing mental health issues. Cambridge should suspend the professor until this is all clear. Scotland Yard should apologise, send a note to News UK, to their chief executive, Rebecca Brooks, and the editor of the Times Education Supplement, and to the reporter involved. And this whole matter should come to an end. Carter Ruck allegedly said that there was some suggestion of racial aspect to the investigation. If I were that journalist, I would ask my company to seek reparation and an apology from Carter Ruck for making such an allegation. Nothing to do with the guy's colour. If the guy was white, he would have been suspended and actually slung out months ago. You know that, I know that. The whole thing is a scandal and a disgrace. I don't know how. At the moment, it looks to me as though Cambridge University are trying to say that there wasn't much plagiarism involved. If that's the case, that's fine. Perhaps he'd like to explain all the other ones, remember? Shall we go through them one more time? WaterAid. No, he didn't go abroad with WaterAid because WaterAid don't allow their people to go abroad. He didn't seem to run 600 miles in 6 days. He definitely didn't. He's already said that. Didn't raise 5.5 million. He wasn't a visiting professor in Ohio. He wasn't a professor in Glasgow. He wasn't any of this stuff. So let's hope that the plagiarism isn't 100% of his PhD. or even 80% or 70% or 60%. And probably he's a very bright guy. There's a lot of bright guys out there, but they're not professors at Cambridge. Why doesn't Cambridge just suspend him until we see the smoke clear? And there is a reason for this, a reason which I suspect you and I know. That if that was me, first of all, I'm not bright enough to get a PhD. I'm not even bright enough to go to university. I got slung out. 17 attempts, 1 GCSE. Congratulations. My name's Kelvin MacKenzie. But the point about it is that actually, Cambridge do nothing. Cambridge are falling backwards in the world university rankings. Actually, so are Oxford, actually. And there are some good universities in the UK which are on the way up, but they're on the way down. Cambridge's reactions to Professor Ade explains why. Leave the journalists alone. The Times educational supplement is actually an academic exercise. It's not the Sun. I'd be grateful if News UK would come out all guns blazing. I'd be grateful if the Times education supplement would come out all guns blazing. And I would like an explanation why on earth a police officer would say to a reporter, don't send questions. It's upsetting the mental stability of somebody. It is unbelievable, but we all know why it's happening. That one went on a bit too long, that I'm afraid, but you get my drift. I think it's an absolute outrage and it's beyond understanding. But anyway, somebody to bring everybody down to earth and bring a bit of humour into the building. Mike Graham. Morning.
What was the one GCSE you got then?
I got English literature the first time, and then when I took it again, I failed it.
Really?
Yeah, which is, you've got to say, it's not easily done, is it?
No. Why did you take it again if you got it right the first time?
Because my parents were so appalled at my result that they said that they had to see all, so took all 8, got 1.
Yeah.
They said, take them all again, and that way we'll pretend that you were ill that year.
Right, and you got 7 or something.
And I got none. Which then led to a lot of tension.
That is quite an achievement, though. I got 4 O levels, right? And my careers master said, if you don't get 5, you'll end up being a bin man. To which I said, well, that's quite a good job, bin man. Yeah. I mean, because I always wanted the West End run where you went at midnight. On the back
you made good money.
You made really good money. Yeah. You go till about 4 a.m, empty all the bins out of the restaurants, and then you took an early cut, and you made, I think in those days, about 25 quid a shift. Which was not bad money.
Yes, that's right. And as many stale McDonald's as you could eat.
And it was really hard to get on the runners because it was very much in demand.
Oh, right.
Well,
look, I totally buy all that.
Yeah.
I look at the speed that the bin guys go round my way.
Yeah.
Most of them could be running marathons.
Yeah.
They are hugely fit people. The other people that are normally quite fit, well, I knew one who it was anyway, were baggage handlers at major airports.
Yeah. They speed around in those little low, funny...
but it's this bit.
Oh, those guys,
Those blokes, right. They're all basically weightlifters. Their next job is getting the gold medal at some Olympics or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you make of all
Unbelievable. This? I saw your tweet yesterday, retweeted it, because the idea that... 2 things, really. One... that the police are involved at all, and they're even attempting. I mean, there was a time when the police would be frightened to talk to a journalist like that because you might write about it, right? Imagine getting a phone call if you'd got a phone call from the police saying, would you mind not harassing David Beckham, please, because he's suffering from mental health problems, and would you mind taking Phil Ramey out of the helicopter that you're flying around over Madonna's house, because actually she's not really enjoying it very much. You'd never do it. They tell this guy you can't make any more inquiries about him or to him. Yeah. It's absolutely nonsense. And then for the law company, the Council Ruck lot, to try and intimidate journalists into not operating, which we know they've done. I mean, I had a nice letter from them once representing Mr. James O'Brien. Who was trying to sue me.
I find that incredible. Yeah. Why would James O'Brien, who must be a free speech absolutist because of the garbage that he talks, why on earth would he want to do that to you? Because he's never done it to me, and I've mentioned the fact that he lives in a gated community in Chiswick.
Well, I call him a pedo apologist. Which he didn't understand because he didn't understand the difference between pedo, apologist and pedo apologist without the comma.
Yeah.
And
Who
so
are you talking about, by the way? Who was the pedo in this case?
Oh, well, Carl Beach.
It was Carl Beach. That was
because he was the one.
He's never
apologised.
Yeah.
No, and he was the only journalist who believed the Carl Beach story.
Yeah.
He used to put this guy on from Xaro Media every single week.
They've all gone bust, haven't they?
They've all gone bust because the story was a complete dud.
Yeah.
You know, it was all run by that horrible guy who used to be Gordon Brown's kind of. Henchman, Tom Watson.
Oh yeah.
You know because
who ended up as Lord Watson.
He is Lord Watson, but you know what happened? He was Gordon Brown's guy, right? And Gordon Brown has never forgiven News UK for dumping him. You know, which they did.
But that was
on the eve.
By the way, I am on Gordon Brown's side on that.
Yeah.
That was a shocking piece of politics by James Murdoch, who decided
They just on the night of his speech to Labour conference, they went for the Tories, right?
Don't you think that was completely mad?
Well, I mean, it may or may not have been mad, but nevertheless, he retaliated by saying to Tom Watson, "We're going to go for them, and we're going to go for them hard," and that's what happened. And so that's why Tom Watson then forced that whole kind of hacking inquiry into news and all. That was where it all began. And so, the payback was all then wrapped up into that whole Carl Beach story and the whole kind of, supposed sex ring.
To be honest with you, with the when Andy became kind of director of comms at Number 10,
Andy Coulson,
the die was cast, wasn't it? I mean, why did nobody say to Andy, "You're now going into politics.
Yeah.
If there's anything hanging around the game, honestly, it will be multiplied 10,000 times." That's the reality of public life.
It
and
is.
if he had never done that, I suspect none of this would have ever come out.
No, that's probably
and
right.
his own life would have been different.
Yeah. But I think the problem is that at that time, in that organisation, people became so inured to reality.
Correct.
They thought they could do anything.
Yeah,
And they
correct.
could walk on water.
Yeah.
And you know what happens in that scenario.
Yeah, I do. I'm very sorry about this, Mike. It's going to be shorter today.
No, that's all right.
Yesterday, I was still laughing at the thought of you telling a story about a dog dying, right? Completely inappropriately. The story probably having a long tail, as we say, and me knowing that this was not going to end well.
No,
I couldn't. So I was even laughing at it, and it must be 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, easy.
20 years ago. So those are the times
I know.
when somebody you know is telling a story which is going to end up actually blowing up in their face, and you have nothing to do with it, but you are enjoying the blowing up. There is no greater feeling.
It's fantastic. Absolutely.
Great feeling. Anyway, thank you very much indeed, Mike. Sorry it's such a short time.
No, don't worry.
Because the truth about the matter, when he stays on, the audience stays on. Directly he legs it. They say, we don't want that board-headed old git for another couple of hours. Right, thanks very much. Well, we've got important guests now coming up. Lawrence Fox, the leader of Reclaim Britain, and who's slugging it out in Clacton. Good to see you, Lawrence. How are you feeling, by the way?
I'm all right, thanks, Kelvin. Yes, I'm not bad. It's been a strange week.
I read a tweet of yours in which you were actually, I thought you made a very good point actually, and it was immediately taken on, in which you said, "We'll be interested, since I'm going to go and see a doctor about something," and you said, "Be interesting to see how people's kind reaction is to all this." And the first thing that happened, as your prediction, was some idiot then goes and piles in. Honestly, Lawrence, the world is made up. Anyway, let's talk about you, about Reclaim Britain. Why did you start it? There are so many. Isn't it expensive to start your own party?
It is expensive to start your own party. I started it back in 2020 after appearing on Question Time and committing the cardinal sin of saying that Britain was a warm, welcoming and tolerant country. And I then seemed to lose my acting career overnight because I wasn't, obviously kind enough, I suppose, would be the right thing. And so I started up, and then I think, look, it's pretty obvious that I'm not really politician material. I'm a bit actuary in the fact that I'm quite emotional and quite impulsive, and my statesman-like approach could do with some work. But it got better in the Oxford Union the other night. But yeah, so we started it, and then we just got attacked by the establishment, debanked, endless investigations. It was awful. So we couldn't really move it, but we keep the party, and I've used it to stand in Clapton because I'm so upset that the Tories and the and Labour and even Restore didn't stand in a legitimately called by-election. Whether you agree with him calling it or not doesn't matter. It is still a legitimate by-election. So I thought I'll stand there and I'll make the case that all the others can't be bothered to because they're all on holiday.
Well, okay, if I said to you, Lawrence, name me your 3 most important policies in your own mind, what would they be?
Free speech, free speech, free speech.
And do you mean free speech without a limit? Because you're used to being abused. Look, I'm used to being abused, right? Actually, there's something wrong with me. I don't really care, okay? Right? In fact, sometimes when they're really vile, I absolutely roll up and I show it to my wife, who is seriously appalled, right? And a very intelligent, successful woman, utterly appalled by it. But when you say free speech, they say something to you really hurtful. Everybody has a hurt aspect to them. I do as well. Do you feel that is a price worth paying?
Yes, I do, because I think that there's only 2 ways human beings really do communicate. One is by speaking, and the other one is with their fists. So there are legal protections on speech in the law. I think incitement to violence is a pretty good bar for it. But in Britain, we've had 12,000, I think, just over 12,000 arrests last year for speech-related crimes. That puts us well over double what the that bastion of democracy Belarus has, and China is in 4th. So people criticise me a lot for saying that Britain is a communist state, but we've got this sort of Stockholm syndrome with democracy in Britain, thinking, oh, Britain is a bastion of free speech and democracy. It's not. People are being arrested for, and what's terrifying is it's very targeted to a certain community of people who happen to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, usually, and straight white Anglo-Saxon Protestants at that. And I think that unless we stand up to defend the our right to express ourselves freely, and we fight to protect the rights of those we disagree with the absolute most, like Islamists and things like that, if we don't fight for their right, we can't ever truly debate our way out of problems, and we end up having to fight our way out of problems. And I don't, I'm not mad keen on my kids having to fight street corner to street corner because we as adults didn't turn around and say, listen, this isn't the right way to go.
So when you turn up in Clacton, now I admire you for doing it, man. I admire you for doing it. When you walk down the street, honestly, you're a famous guy, right? You were a famous guy years before you were a politician. Okay, what kind of welcome do you get?
People are really nice. I mean, look, they're very loyal to Nigel, and I think that's great. And one of the other reasons I wanted to stand was because Nigel is using this I can understand why, because the establishment are, we can go into the nitty gritty of the millions and all that sort of stuff, but I think the public understand that Nigel Farage is quite a unique property in British politics and is under physical danger. And yep. Nigel is, and also the establishment is going to try and end him. I had very senior Tory WhatsApp me the other day when I said how disgusted I was that they didn't stand. And they said, well, it doesn't matter. Nigel's going to be out of a job soon anyway. So they've already planned the end of Nigel Farage. So he is seeking a large mandate. So I wanted to go and stand. It's not to stand in support of him particularly. It's to say, Nigel, you're very cagey on some of the issues that really matter to people, certainly on things like even discussing mass deportations, which he calls an impossibility. But certainly he's also not brilliant on free speech, unless it's Nigel Farage's free speech. So people are sympathetic. People are sympathetic to me. But at the same time, I think I think the electorate are sick to death of being treated by the media and the political class as some sort of football that can kick them around. They've had it in Makerfield so that Andy Burnham could come in and do his sort of Keir Starmer light. And they're getting this in Clacton. And actually, I was very disappointed seeing Rupert Lowe yesterday talking about, we've got this wonderful 5-principled deal that I want to put to Nigel. It's like, put that in front of the electorate, Rupert. don't put that to Nigel personally. These private political deals, the public is sick of them. So I saw someone sent me a poll the other day, and we're now polling. I'm now polling. I register. It's not a large percentage,
Good news. Well done.
But it's there. And someone sent it to me, and I went, "Who's Rec?" And they went, "You." I went, "Oh, okay." So I'm going to go and I'm going to make the argument that we need, on the right of politics, we need Nigel Farage to talk to Rupert Lowe, to talk to Kemi Badenoch, because even if you add all those votes up together, it's not going to be enough unless people are very careful to take on what is going to become a socialist behemoth of the Lib Lab Green alliance. We've got to understand this is the last election Britain is ever going to have at this rate.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, Lawrence, because that is my fear. When you just do the maths on it, it's no good. There's also a rather strange feeling I have that this is a different Lawrence Fox, right? Now, I've known you. I don't know you well at all, right? So we've probably met once or twice in our whole lives, right? The last time I met you, you were enormously fiery. You were kind of trying to be, which is not difficult against me, intellectually dominant, right? That is not a high hurdle, right? But now I get the impression that it may have been, as you referred to your Oxford debate the other day, which I know went well, that have you decided to try to channel your kind of intellectual rigor in a calmer manner, which works better sometimes, I think, with the ordinary person. I'm just raising that issue. That's all.
I think I've got an amazing wife, and she.
How long you been married?
We're married a year in on July the 4th, so we're just over a year, and she's got this look that she does when I do fiery Lawrence, and it's a look of sort of disappointment. And I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm frightened of her, but I don't like disappointing my wife. And I think she's trying to draw out the part of me, which is, I am presumptuous, and I think actors are generally. But I think it is, you can make the same point without shouting down someone's throat about it.
Yes, I think that is a very good point. Let them make their point, and because you've got a decent intellect, push back against it. When I was fascinated by the worry that I have looking at the numbers, and numbers do change. I totally recognise that, but there seems to be a movement around at the moment which would indicate that some kind of lab coalition it is enormously likely for us, and the aspect of that could be that we could go further left. Not centrist at all, and that centrists may be lost for the UK for 10, 15 years.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that Reform are very left-leaning. And it's because, I suppose, Labour have completely abandoned their core voter base, in order to appease kind of mentally ill people and foreign religious extremists. So Reform are picking up a lot of traditional Labour voters who are very brilliant, patriotic and wonderful people, but they are left-leaning. The new Labour Party and the Green Party particularly, they're Jacobins, they're French revolutionaries. They're not. They're very, very extreme political forces, and they're very, very dangerous. And as we've seen, I was absolutely blown away by how quickly people seem to have moved on from the political assassination of Anne Widdecombe. You're like, hang on a minute. This is an assassination of a senior political figure, and in many people's eyes, a much loved political figure. But it's sort of become a norm in Britain. It's like, well, if you happen to love your country and you'll speak your mind, then you deserve what's coming. So this is another reason why I do think you do need the Rupert Lowe's. You do need Kemi Badenoch, who I find hugely impressive, especially on the most important stuff, which is cultural stuff. I'm not sure she's brilliant on everything else, but on the cultural stuff and on all of the stuff that's being used by the socialists to divide us, she's very, very strong. And I would love to see people put aside their egos and say, listen, We are up against a rabid Jacobin type of socialist. And if you want Britain to descend even further into the chaos, and that's before we've dealt with the demographic devastation of our country, then you've got to try and work together. And I will go and make that case in Clacton. And if I itch Nigel Farage's side with a few percent of the vote, then at least that teaches him that there is a percentage of the vote in Restore and, hopefully with me and the Conservatives that aren't going to just change their principles because Reform feel like they're anointed. We've got to stick together. And it's very antithetical to the sort of Conservative way of looking at the world, because Conservatives don't like being told what to do, and they want to vote for who they want to, and they want less intervention, less state, less control, and they want to be more free. And I
Well,
think we've got to embrace that.
Okay, I'll ask you there's two issues I'd like to understand. One of them is, in the light of Anne Widdecombe's assassination, how do you feel about your own safety? And the reason I say that is that Jacob Rees-Mogg, who I actually really like, I love his intellect and I love the way he makes his arguments, and I much prefer the Lawrence Fox way of making your argument. This is a joy to me, this discussion, right? He tells me the other day, he lives in Westminster, and he used to walk from his home in Westminster to the studios for GB News in Westminster, okay? Perhaps it was a 5-7 minute walk. He no longer does that. He now drives, because he's fearful that the Anne Widdecombe murder alerted him to the dangers. Lawrence, you're a prominent figure. You're famous, right? Whether you want to be famous or not, television makes you famous, right? Do you feel uneasy when you walk down the street?
Certainly, I do. Yeah, there was a long period when I was when a lot of this stuff broke and I was receiving a lot of threats. There was periods when I developed a serious agoraphobia, and I would get to the front door of my house and my hand would shake, and it wasn't a delirium tremens shake; it was an agoraphobic shake. Where we live is fortunately very rural. Leftists, I mean, that didn't help Anne Widdecombe, bearing that in mind, but we have a very, very strong security system. And I've got 6 dogs, and I'm training up a very lethal little German Shepherd who loves me more than anything in the world. So we've got a big security system. When I go out in public, I have eyes in the back of my head. At Oxford, I had 4 special forces security people who actually had to evacuate us from our hotel at 3 a.m. They just woke us up and said, we've got to get out, we've got to get out, we've got to go. I don't think one of the things that one could agree with across the political spectrum, which is so fractured and divided in Britain these days, is that political violence is absolutely unacceptable under all terms. And I think it should be the most important principle actually in politics, which is, again, it takes me back to the Anne Widdecombe thing. It's like, why haven't people just stopped dead in their tracks and said, we've really got to take stock here, guys? People are being murdered. And the answer, therefore, unfortunately, is, as I've said, the new left, the Jacobin left, they are like the terror of the French Revolution. And we've all got to be very careful. There's always a nutter out there, and it's why calling people Nazis and all of this stuff is so bad, because young impressionable people, or people who are troubled in some way, think they're doing the world a favour by killing off a Nazi, and we should stop calling each other Nazis. And we should stop using these it's very rich coming from me. I understand that. But we do need to work, all of us, to try and get a more temperate tone to this discussion, because it's getting worse and worse and worse. So the long answer is yes, I do fear for my safety. And the short answer is I'm never, ever going to bow down and live in fear, because they've won.
Right. So if we looked at quite an interesting throwaway line there when you were talking about A, praise of Kemi Badenoch, B, then describing what a conservative is, freedom, free speech, allowed to get on with your business, allow with all that. Wouldn't that be a home I'll say this, for the new Lawrence Fox? I mean, let's be honest, Lawrence. The way you're talking now, you could be Home Affairs in Reform, you could be running Restore, you could be in the Conservative Party. I wonder whether you need a bigger platform I think you've come to a movement in the road, and you've decided I can carry on being shouty and vile, or actually I can control my intellect and just deal with the questions in front of me. And if you can deal with them in that way, right? And honestly, you're an actor, so I can't be 100% sure, right? But if you can deal with that way, don't you need a bigger platform rather than a one-man band? I mean, you were praising the Tories there.
I do believe that at the end, that reform doesn't really exist without Nigel Farage. I think he's a political force
Correct.
which is
Correct.
absolutely wonderful. So to me, reform,
Correct.
I've been very rude about them in the past, calling them a political Ponzi scheme. But without Farage, they don't really exist. So if he gets into number 10 by some miracle, he gets into number 10, he's going to be Liz Truss on day one by the deep state and the establishment, and they're going to, they'll kill the economy and they'll do everything to stop him succeeding. And what comes after Nigel? It goes back to the Conservatives, and the Conservatives are realizing that they've got to start being conservative. And, I'm good friends with some Conservatives. I do think there has to be, I'm going to actually take a period over the next several months where I'm just going to take a step back from it so I can reflect. And as you say, try and gather my thoughts a bit about the seriousness of what's going on. But deep down, I'm a Conservative. That's what I am. And I'm very liberal over certain things like same-sex marriage and stuff like that. I've got no issue with that, and I loathe identity politics. But deep down, I'm a Conservative. Stay out of my life. The state is dreadful at doing things that families should be doing, and I'm a very pro-family, very pro relationships, very pro the culture and heritage of our country being held up and used as a model and an experience to raise your own children within, without the state intervening and telling us when we should and shouldn't die or kill ourselves, or these sorts of things. So I would, maybe one day the Conservatives will forget some of my social media posts. Doggies.
I would look. I would say
Sorry.
about this. I would say about this world, which is the one that you identified in relation to to Anne Widdecombe's murder or assassination, is that honestly, my experience, which I first got when I lived in America, was that nobody can remember anything after about 2 or 3 weeks. Within your own family, if you are PC Harper's widow, you can remember this every day, every minute, every hour of your life. But the general politics of life, for instance, things that you may have said about the Conservatives, will be lost in the wash literally within 10 days. So I would say that if you felt you had something to offer, I think you need a different platform. And I also think that you're a different person. But look, I don't know you well. So tell me, how many times have you been married then? Have you just been married the twice?
This is my second and hopefully only other marriage. I was married once to the former pop star Billy Piper.
Oh, right. And how many kids have you got, by the way?
I've got 2 of my own, and Lizzie brings 2 of hers. So we've got a full house of teenagers and mobile phones, and it's really interesting, isn't it? You're talking about people forget things in 2 days. I think one of the huge misunderstood aspects of the change in modern society is just how vain and narcissistic young people are becoming by force, not by their own weakness, because of these of the phones. And there's people that are doing really good stuff. Sophie Winkleman's doing really good stuff on the balance. But again, you don't really want the state to interfere and tell you when you can and can't use your phone. You want the parents to feel that they are part of a broader coalition, that these phones are they can be very, very damaging things to young people's lives, and mistakes they make, that we made as young people, which no one recorded, are recorded in perpetuity. And I think it really makes children very vulnerable to groupthink, because they're terrified of being outed by someone or bullied, or I really feel for the young generation. But unfortunately, we're very united in the way that we deal with our kids.
Well, actually, I mean, there's an interesting. I prefer almost the social aspect of this conversation rather than the political one. But so when you see can children grow out of this? Like I am one kind of person when I was a teenager, and probably when I was in my 30s, and I am what I am today. You are in a moment of transfer, it seems to me. So why couldn't children, when they reach kind of 18 and there is another freedom to them, why can't they just reject what they were like before and not worry about their phones so much as they did when they were 12 or 13? Or are they
I
damaged?
think I think that they do. You inevitably change, but I mean, I don't know how your teenage years were. Mine were pretty torturous. I have to say, I found them pretty hard without phones. So I just think that we're also talking about something which is as addictive as any drug I've ever taken in my life. You know, I find myself going to the loo. I take my phone with me. You know, it's like an extension of my body, and I'm an adult who can make grown-up decisions. I'm not a child competing, and you know, my face isn't changing, and I'm not worried about my weight and all that. You know, I've lost all of that because I'm an old blonde dude with tattoos. I just feel for them. I really feel for them. But they are what it does do is it creates incredible resilience and really good humour as well in kids. Especially my son is forever showing me very funny memes, and they're also very politically astute, which you wouldn't expect. You know, my son will come in and he'll show me something he's seen on TikTok of Nigel Farage, for example. Whereas when I was a kid, I hadn't. When I was his age, I hadn't heard of Nigel Farage. You know, and so
It's true. All
it's
right.
great. It's great to
Just
see that generation.
one issue that was raised with me, actually by a guy who runs a nightclub in Glasgow. He tells me the following, and this is to your point, that the kids who go to his nightclub, a good lump of them are coming to their kind of first aid medical room halfway through the evening, suffering from anxiety because they don't know how to deal with people around them. Because this is because they have been on this all the time, that they're now in a group and whatever. He said it's an incredible thing. It's leading to kids not going to nightclubs because so his commercial world is being affected by something that he has no control over. So that's to your point.
And then, well, the phone is, you know, as you know, the phone is not there to really deliver you good news, is it? As much as the phone designers try and put in health apps and, you know, screen time stuff, the phone is basically a place where you go to explore your anxiety or to relieve it through someone else's anxiety. So, you know, it's really important that people, you know, obviously not stomach pumped and all that sort of stuff, but, you know, you really miss out on a crucial kind of rite of passage in life if you hadn't gone into a club, drunk a few cans of Hofmeister and hurled up on the pavement outside.
Yeah, well, it was certainly. By the way, that was me about 2 years ago. No, that was not true. So, when are you next down in Clacton? When are you likely to walk down the high street and say hello to people? And how do you find? I suppose being an actor, you can actually say hello to people with a broad smile, and you can actually believe it. I mean, this is not you. This is because the great thing about acting is you become that person. You are that person. And so, when's it going to happen?
Well, it'll be either this afternoon or tomorrow.
Right.
The thing is, you don't need to pretend with people like in Clacton. Clacton, and it drives me absolutely bonkers because I love the British seaside. The British seaside is one of the most beautiful parts of this country. And the people there have been maligned, ignored, abused, treated dreadfully over things like fishing and stuff like that. But they tend to be the most down to earth, normal, non-fussy, straightforward, brilliant people. So you don't have to pretend. One of the things I really love, and it's a great thing, you know, people call me a posho and all of this stuff. But one of the great things about when I was young and I was at Harrow and things like that is you don't really learn how to speak to people because you're only around a certain thing. So when you meet people who come from totally different backgrounds and you see how similar we all are, I find it really reassuring. So I don't have to pretend. I just walk down the road and people are so nice in this country. I really love it. That someone usually comes up and says hi and I get talking. I'm not great. I tell you where I'm not great is walking around and knocking on people's doors. I hated it when politicians did. Diana did it to me when I lived in London and she got short shrift. The door, she said, hello, I'm in. I said, I know who you are, Bush. And so I'm not
you wouldn't do that today. You wouldn't do that today, Lawrence. From the guy I'm talking to now, you would consider that, and I would consider that bloody rude, okay? Actually, you'd say, you've probably come to the wrong door, Diana. I wish you every success, but you're not for me. Do you see what I mean? I don't see the point. Okay, one final question before we go is I'd like you to talk through your Oxford University experience. Now, as far as I know, it was an enormous success, right? I think you were pleased with it. I'm told that your audience was delighted with you. What is it? How did you find it, and what role did Mohammed play in it all?
Yes, yeah, I was sat there for a long time, and again, this is to your point about not being shouty. And
Yeah,
there are so many things you can say about Islam, which are very horribly provocative and really unnecessary and hurtful to individual Muslims. Because I really wanted to separate that out. So I was thinking to myself, what is the thing that I believe in the most, which is free expression, and everyone's right to express themselves, criticize all gods or none. And what is the Islamic take on that? So I'd sat down and I'd written a couple of speeches and I wasn't happy with either of them. And I thought, just stick to this cartoon thing, because what will happen is you'll let the other side will do your work for you. We've seen horrible murder and slaughter committed on people who have shown the cartoon of Muhammad. There's currently a teacher from Batley Grammar School who is still in hiding for his life.
yeah,
After
shocking, beyond shocking, beyond
and
shocking.
and Kim Ledbetter, the Labour MP, says absolutely nothing about it. She talks a lot about online harm, but she doesn't talk about real life harm.
Correct.
And I thought, I'm going to make this point, and I'm going to set this envelope up, and I'm going to show this picture of cartoon of Muhammad. And then I spoke to my wife, and she said, "You do realise it doesn't really matter what's in the envelope, because it's the threat of showing the envelope which is going to cause the problems. In fact, you could have Mickey Mouse in the envelope, wouldn't make any difference. So, and also it probably means we could avoid another fatwa, which would be, let's face it, a good idea. So
Helpful, helpful.
I got a cartoon of Jacob Rees-Mogg, and I put it in the envelope, and I wrote CH on the envelope, so they really thought I was going to pull out the Charlie Hebdo. And the other side did my work for me. I stood up, I did a bit of actuary waving it around and all that. And the Muslim, lovely, lovely Muslim woman, and I tried to be gracious. That was the thing I wanted to be. I wanted to be very gracious, separate out individual Muslims from the ideas they follow. I do think you've got to really love human beings. That should be the beginning of everything we do. But you can attack their ideologies. And I stood up. I said, "Isn't it enough that you've been invited by a Muslim woman to speak here to know that we do believe about free speech?" And I'm sitting there going, "Well, can I open the envelope then?" And then dear old Jacob Rees-Mogg stands up, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is delightful. He's really going to do my work for me." So he stands up, JRM, who was sort of arguing the other side as a kind of, bluff piece for him to prove that he's very clever, which he is. And he stood up and said, "You're not allowed to use props." And there was a big kerfuffle, and they kept trying to shut me up. And in the end, I took out the cartoon of Jacob Rees-Mogg. But the atmosphere in the room, I
Yeah, it was
cannot
tense,
describe.
tense.
And bearing in mind that there are fans who hate fascism, who keep shutting down debates. The room wasn't that full, but there was on the other side, there was a big thuggish gang of new converts to Islam, and they were beginning to rock forward in their chairs like they were going to get up. And my sort of former SAS guys were squeezing their chairs, and it was getting more and more tense. And I thought, this is making my point for me. Unless we can have this discussion, unless this proposal can be raised that Islam and the West is right to be suspicious of Islam, if we cannot have that discussion, then we are a Muslim nation because we've submitted. And call me old-fashioned. I'm not going to submit to Islam because I'm not Muslim. But by all means, be a Muslim. But I don't think Islam is bought. I'm not Keir Starmer levels of how wonderful Islam is, what the great benefits Islam's brought to Britain. I'm not. I just don't believe that, and I think I'm entitled to hold that view. Actually,
When you showed the cartoon of Jacob Rees-Mogg, could you feel the air coming out of the balloon?
yeah. Oh boy, did the air come out of that balloon! It was a collective. I mean, my side knew I was going to do it, so I'd already told them. Because I didn't want them. I didn't want everyone getting tense. I wanted my side to know it was okay. So the tension was very much released. It was strange to be with the other side there, which I thought was really sad, because there was a dinner before and meetings after. They were very, very, very hostile. people.
What, Jacob
And
Rees-Mogg
no,
was?
no,
Was it?
no, Rees-Mogg, not at all.
No.
But and actually Arwa, the president, she was really lovely. But the other two speakers, I can't remember his name, Andalusi, and I really don't remember the other guy's name. They were extremely hostile. It was like we were dirty to them. And I felt very sorry for them. When I walked out, I had them come up to me right in my face. I ended up getting right in someone's face, and it carried on as we went outside.
Seriously?
And I thought it was going to end in fisticuffs. Yeah, because I had someone coming up to me and going, "You're a racist. You're a racist, Islamophobic, racist," and I'm just like, "Stop this stuff." So there was a standoff outside with my security and a big bunch of skinhead white boys who call themselves Abdullah Al Fatah Al Centre Parksy or whatever.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it was.
well,
It was
historical stuff. Right, Lawrence, that was a great discussion. We should do it more regularly because yeah, it's Clacton now. You will have other thoughts, and I wish you every success. And when we do it again, we talk about wider politics again, as well as your own. I hope. Actually, the greatest thing would happen is if you got a good number as well. Because if you got a good number, Restore got a good number, Reform got a good number, it would be good fun. Because what we're seeing on the other side is very dangerous, I think. But I'm an old guy, and what I think doesn't really matter. But thank you very much indeed. Anyway, that's Lawrence Fox, who is leader of Reclaim Britain. Now, I didn't even know anything about Reclaim Britain, and I know a little bit about Lawrence Fox. That's a different Lawrence Fox, don't you think? Yeah, great. And that was made by him, by the way. It's not made by my questions. It's made by his responses. And obviously marriage has been helpful to him. And I enjoy that Lawrence Fox more than I enjoyed the other Lawrence Fox. Anyway, coming up right now is the news, and then we've got another hugely controversial politician heading our way later on. I don't think she's on for about another 20 minutes or so, but you've got to be here for Sophie Cockerand. And the reason you've got to be here for Sophie is because her own personal story has taken a rather surprising turn after the news.
I'm Edward Hughes. Princess Eugenie and Jack Brooksbank have welcomed their third child, a baby girl born on Monday in Lisbon, Portugal. Mother and daughter are doing well, and the baby is yet to be named. A mega dinghy carrying 173 migrants caught fire and capsized in the English Channel yesterday. All were rescued by French and British crews and returned to France, with no fatalities. The Knob of the North says he has tightened the government's early release scheme for prisoners, excluding those convicted of rape, serious child sex offences and grooming. Around 5,000 inmates will still be freed over the coming months to ease overcrowding, starting in October, though some manslaughter cases remain eligible and victims' families have voiced strong criticism. Nice one, Nobby. Separately, the Treasury is planning extra borrowing of about £9 billion a year to fund housing, infrastructure and startups. Latest Tigers.
Yeah, hi there, Kelvin MacKenzie. That was an interesting interview with Lawrence Fox, wasn't it? Came as a bigger surprise to me than it probably even did to you. I think if Lawrence acts like that, keeps his intellect and his energy more controlled, shall we say, I would think that he will find a bigger platform to run on. I certainly hope so. Anyway, I mean, most of the things he believes in, 99.9% of the country will believe in. So I can't imagine what the issue is. And you're right, he raises an issue about Islam. Islam is a perfectly reasonable point, and I am concerned, by the way, that the Islamophobia's definition is still coming our way, and when that happens, you will really see some tension in society. I think. All right, might please Islam. I have no idea why. They seem to have everything anyway. I think on the other side of the balance sheet, I think that will lead to a lot of problems. Anyway, we've got coming up right now, Lady Rosie Shepherd. I saw her, I spoke with her last week. Her sister was murdered and was killed. and the killer may well be released. And this also is really centre stage at the moment. I saw a headline, I think, in the Daily Mail saying that 9,500 domestic abusers are going to be released. Imagine how all those families are feeling, kind of innocent women who are enormously worried about their abuser walking down the same high street as them, being in the same supermarket as them, literally going almost to the same playground as them. It must be enormously worrying. So I'd like to welcome Rosie. Good to see you again, Rosie.
Hello, good to see you again.
Okay, fine. Now, you've been following the debate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Have you had any success going through your political circles in trying to get some kind of explanation of why they're doing it, or whether there's any chance of somebody in your prominent position able to stop it?
No, I've had still no response about our personal case.
Well, that was to
from
the Ministry of Justice
yesterday morning. So, and it was just the same as what the Prime Minister had outlined. It was word for word the same. It was none of my and my family's questions answered. So my local MP has written back and said this isn't good enough. None of the family's questions are being answered as to why he is eligible. And the Justice Secretary has had my sister's case put to him, and he has agreed live on radio yesterday morning. He agreed to meet with me. So his team now has my details to contact me to discuss this whenever.
That's a step forward. Perhaps, Rosie, we've got quite a few new viewers come in. Perhaps you'd like to explain what happened to your sister.
So she was walking home from work, and Malcolm Waite hit her, and she died instantly. He didn't stop at the scene. He then crashed further up into a sign. He refused a breathalyzer. He swore at the police that were trying to arrest him. And when he eventually was breathalyzed, he was 4.5 times over the limit with alcohol. He had alcohol in his car in the footwell. The police said he was the drunkest driver they'd ever arrested. And still, he only got 8 years.
It's astonishing that. So as things stand, when do you think, under this third rule, which I didn't really realise, that there's actually been a total change this is my ignorance, total change in sentencing policy in this country, is that anybody who doesn't fall into this area of rapists and sex assault, people responsible for sex assaults, is only going to do a third. So he's going to be out in 2.5 years or something, is he?
Yeah, well, he's served 4 so far, and he's due to serve another year. So he was under the old legislation, he was supposed to serve 2/3 of his sentence.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to be out in December 2027 was his earliest release. And obviously under the new sentencing, they're now saying he could be released in October.
Dear, oh dear. Can I ask you this? How far, does he live locally to you? Is it within a matter of miles, or how close is he to you, where he lives?
So from me personally, he's about 20 minutes car journey. Right. But I have several family members that live in the neighbouring villages to his.
Right, okay. And I know it's a simple question. How do you feel about that, though? I mean, literally the idea of bumping into somebody in the post office or down the supermarket, that must it'd be hard not to reach out to them in some rather physical way, wouldn't it?
I think a lot of some of my family members have, more rage due to their grief. I mean, my children know what he looks like, so my children could be with their friends and out and see him, and that terrifies me because, I wouldn't know what my kids would feel at the time. I mean, we just want some clarity around his release, if he is going to be released, as to if we can have an exclusion zone to stop him coming back
That's a good idea.
into this county, which is what we would really like. So as victims, we want to be listened to, and we want to be part of the conversation around his release, if it's going, but because it's happening so soon, I don't feel we're going to get that opportunity. I think that's what we're worried about.
I like the expression that you used just then, listen to. Do you get the impression that politicians, I certainly think from that Ministry of Justice letter, I would have felt like that. Do you get the impression that they either disregard your views or actually worse than that, kind of look like that about them? Do you know that you will be something? I mean, I like the idea of the Secretary of State for Justice saying that he'll come and see you. I don't disregard that. But I kind of get the feeling that both you and I know what he will say to you, because I think he's already said it before, hasn't he?
Yeah, I've just said we want to be listened to, and that's because we are not being listened to. And I mean, we're just a small family. We don't have. It wasn't a big national news. So we don't have the same leverage. And I'm not a politician. I don't really know anything. I'm just a dental nurse. And a mother.
Can I be honest? Can I be honest with you? Honestly, I think that what people see is authenticity. What they're not seeing is they're not seeing a politician saying something to get through the next 5 minutes of an interview. They're listening to somebody who is going through a nightmare, which will always be with you. For the politician, their careers may be with them and they're gone, right? They don't care. I'm not saying they don't care. They care for the moment, but they care for their actual careers. Whereas for you and your family, your mother, for instance, I remember your mother last time we were talking, you talked about her. And in fact, I think actually your sister was on her way to see her mother with a bunch of flowers, if I remember correctly.
Yes, right? Yeah, that's correct.
So this is the authentic voice of pain. So I'm not sure they understand that. So when he says something to you, perfectly good intellectual point, which is we don't have any room for these people. Surely we can make room on a one-for-one basis. Can't we say that guy should not come out? For instance, let's talk about PC Harper, right? It's painful for your own family. PC Andrew Harper, the Chief Constable, everybody outside the Justice Secretary and the Prime Minister say one thing, that guy should not come out. Can't they just say, in the same with this drunken pig who killed your sister, you're not coming out? Why don't they just say that?
Yeah, that would just be, yeah. They're not going to say that, but I think
you don't think they will? They wouldn't say that to you?
No, not to me. No, I think what I'm trying to achieve now is just to make sure that our views are heard around his release, because as much as I am petitioning and I'm trying to stop his release, I don't think I'm going to make a difference. Right. They've made the decision for which prisoners they're going to release, and I think it's probably very difficult to reverse that.
Okay, well that's very good. It's great to talk to you, Rosie. We will talk again. I did say last time we would talk again. You'd always be welcome. Anytime you want to come on, you don't have to have an official invite. You just come on, speak to Charlotte and say, I've got something to say, and you'd always be welcome on here. Right? We've always got airtime for you, Rosie.
Thank you very much.
Your family.
I really appreciate that.
And much love to your mother. Much love to
Thank
your
you. All right. Thank you.
You could literally drop a tear for every single victim's family who are facing this kind of quandary. They kind of understand the political force means that their views get swept away, but at the same time, they want to have their voice listened to. I hope that the Justice Secretary, who I'm told is not much good, by the way, and it's basically a placeman. Mind you, they've got a history of not much good in justice, haven't they? They had Lammy before. Oh my God! I see even Burnham has scrapped the idea of no juries. Thank God for that. Okay, now important story. It was on the front page of the Times yesterday, and in which an expert said, and there seems to be a lot of experts around in the health world at the moment. The expert said that the autism analysis is such that actually we could all have autism. You know what? I'm sure we've all got ADHD. Anybody who's a journalist has got ADHD because their mind is always flipping around everywhere. Now, we have somebody who knows whether that analysis is correct is Dr. Dean Eggett. He's an NHS GP and a fellow of the Royal College of General Practitioners. Good morning, Doctor.
Hi, Kelvin. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So I sat on the train yesterday on the way to this mammoth television empire, and I started filling in one of those forms, online forms. There is no way that I am suffering from autism, right? The questions were quite clear. My answers, which were, by the way, the answers were always given in emojis. There were like 78 questions. Honestly, because I've got ADHD, I literally did about 9. No, I'm joking there, but and I didn't feel that was true. Do you believe that the general analysis of either depression, anxiety, ADHD, autism means that many of us actually could be diagnosed as such and therefore claim benefits?
There's clearly a problem with how we're classifying autism and ADHD at the moment. The reason why I say that is because it's classed as a disorder, an illness. And by definition, it can't be a disorder and an illness if the majority of the population have it, because that would
Correct.
then be classed as normal. So
Correct.
there's a problem that we have then is having to identify who does have autism, who does have ADHD, and who doesn't. Now, I firmly believe that these diagnoses exist, and some people do debate that too. Is autism a real thing? Is ADHD a real thing? Now, I want to make it categorically clear. These are real things. The issue we have at the moment is identifying who does have it, who doesn't have it, and also categories of severity, because it's like comparing apples and oranges. You might have autism and you might have features of autism that do impact upon your life and is very severe for you, but you can still live your life with support. And that clearly is not the same as an individual who does not manage to be able to speak on time, does not manage to be able to walk on time, does not manage to be able to interact with other people in any normal way, and never really fits into normal society. Now, at the moment, both of these are called autism, but they're clearly not the same spectrum degree of illness. So the big debate, I suppose, really is, do we still continue to call these autism, or do we say that these are differences from the normal of society and give it a different name and rate it in a different way so that we can understand the difference between these
Okay.
illnesses?
I see you are in your clinic today. I presume it is, and it's not a TV set or something, right? In your time, how long have you been a GP?
Since 2010, started training in 2007.
Okay, fine. So here we are. You're enormously experienced. Have you noticed a flood of younger people coming, seeking, saying, or parents bringing their kids in, saying, I think my little Jimmy's got autism, or my little Janie has definitely got ADHD or depression or anxiety? Have you seen a complete change in the makeup of the patients that you're likely to see in any given week?
Yes, absolutely. And you don't need to be a healthcare professional to recognize that. I think everyone is talking about how everyone is self-diagnosing with autism and ADHD, and we're seeing much more commonly. And like I said, the question is whether or not these all have the same disorder. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple of statistics to give that some relevance, if that's okay.
Okay,
If we were to look back to the 1960s and say, well, how frequently do people have autism? You'd expect it to be somewhere around 1 in My apologies. I'm just looking at the data. It's
Okay.
about 4 in 10,000 people you'd expect to have autism back in the 1960s. So, in
Really?
theory, it's an extraordinarily rare condition. And I'll come to context of that in a moment or two. And nowadays, actually, the statistic is 1 in 57 people would be classed as having autism. So,
Incredible.
these numbers aren't even close. So, it's very easy that in your circle of people you would know somebody who is autistic now, whereas back in the 60s it would be very difficult for you to find somebody who's autistic, and it might actually be somebody who's autistic in your town or village. Now, the difference for that is not necessarily about the existence of autism. It's not necessarily about actually how many people even have autism. It's about how easily we recognize this disorder, that we're communicating with each other's more. People are becoming more interested and understand it, and therefore we can recognize it better. So it's not that autism is suddenly much more more frequent. It's that we didn't necessarily recognize it to the way that we did in the past. But actually, I think we've gone a little bit too far in saying the number of people that have autism, is it still actually autism, or do we need to give it a different name? These individuals who have it are different in society. They communicate in different ways, they think in different ways, they interact in different ways. But we can't compare that to the individual who never met talking milestones.
Yeah, but okay. Can I just interrupt there, Doctor? I'll ask you this: there will be many people who think that actually the whole thing has turned into a racket, where what really is going on is that the medical world, people like yourself, are being used as a battering ram for people who are trying to get benefits to which previously, they're not entitled to, and that we are actually funding. Bizarrely, the taxpayer is funding this a deceit, an expensive deceit, which we can't carry on using. I'm not saying things don't exist. I'm not saying in my own family I have special needs, right? So I'm not some kind of idiot out there thinking everybody's fine. But it looks, when you look at the numbers, the kind of numbers that you've taken, 4 in 10,000 turned out to be 1 in 57. Honestly, somebody is going to have to fund that. Do you find sometimes you're looking at a patient thinking, honestly, please don't do this. It's not, for instance, it's not even fair. It's not fair on you. It's not fair on you.
Yeah, I suppose the point that you're making is about the support that people have access to and what they need. And I understand the challenge here, because just because you have autism that doesn't present in childhood where you can't speak doesn't mean to say you don't need help. But what we have is a system that doesn't have differentiated levels of how we can support you.
Right.
The system hasn't changed with the diagnosis. So in the 1960s, one person in your village would have autism and therefore they'd be allowed support. Because we recognize it more, it's easier to spot and people can describe it better. The numbers have gone up, but the change of how you give support hasn't changed with it. And that to me is the issue. So people will come to me and say, look, I need this form signing because I need to claim a sickness benefit because I'm autistic. And the type of autism that they may have, they may be very well educated. They've gone through school, they've gone through college, they've gone through university, and they may actually have an above average intelligence with incredible qualifications. But the system can only support them in the way of saying, well, here's your income support. Here's the financial support that we give to that title. And it's not the problem of the title, it's the problem of the support that is allocated.
Well, what do they get at the moment, Doctor? I mean, for instance, I come in there, you say, yep, you've passed the test. I don't know whether it's like an exam. You passed the test, you have got autism. This is what we can do for you. There's not a lot that can be done for them. I mean, and by the way, the expression on the spectrum was a considered part of everyday discussion, right? Nobody thought badly of it. Somebody would say, oh, have you seen Tom's boy? I think he's on the spectrum, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. You'd be on the spectrum of almost anything, right? And so you decide, yeah, I've got autism. Are there tablets you take for it, or do you have to read special books, or what do you have to do for it?
And therein lies the challenge. Quite frankly, we don't understand autism that well. It's not as though there's a blood test to find out if you've got it. There's no scan that I can do. It's essentially a trained, educated individual who helps go through a questionnaire, understands your life in a great level of detail, and talks to your family members and says, well, actually, do you or do you not have this social challenge, and therefore do you have autism? Once given that diagnosis, actually many patients feel absolutely abandoned and failed by the NHS and health services because there is no pill. There's no piece of paper I can give you that says this is now going to help you. There's no tablet that's going to help you. There's no surgery that's going to help you. So the sort of support that you get is to speak to somebody who may or may not understand your condition and then signposted to financial support and support at work. And that's pretty much it, unless you have a level of autism where you cannot function at all in society. And even if you cannot function at all in society, the level of support that you're going to get is exactly the same as the person who has a degree and the title of autism too. So there isn't really a massive differentiation in how we help you and support you. And that to me
is true. That is true, because actually, if you took it in the financial sense, and I recognise that obviously you don't want to get involved in that, but you would almost certainly get the same PIP payment or very similar PIP payment if you were fine and going to work, right? On the other side, if you were actually, that's not quite true, because I think you could probably pick up 194 a week or something like that, and you get 83 on the other thing. But the money is great. Look, I'm very sorry. We've got to go now. That was very interesting, that, man. But why don't you just do what I did, which was on the train, actually fill in that form? Because once you fill in that form, if you're saying yes to those things, you are definitely autistic. And my bet is that when you fill that form in, they come to you and they say, I filled it in. You then say, oh, you did you? Actually, you're looking strangely out the window at the same time. You must have autism. Here, by the way, claim your PIP money. I know it sounds very unfair, all that. But anyway, thank you very much indeed, Doctor. It's good to have somebody with some brains coming on rather than the tabloid gobshite this end. Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. Speak again. Right, hi. We're off to the news, and then we're going to a really dramatic form of political bombshell, which never seems far away from my next guest.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Princess Eugenie and Jack Brooksbank have welcomed their third child, a baby girl born on Monday in Lisbon, Portugal. Mother and daughter are doing well, and the baby is yet to be named. A mega dinghy carrying 173 migrants caught fire and capsized in the English Channel yesterday. All were rescued by French and British crews and returned to France, with no fatalities. The Knob of the North says he has tightened the government's early release scheme for prisoners, excluding those convicted of rape, serious child sex offences and grooming. Around 5,000 inmates will still be freed over the coming months to ease overcrowding, starting in October, though some manslaughter cases remain eligible and victims' families have voiced strong criticism. Nice one, Nobby. Separately, the Treasury is planning extra borrowing of about £9 billion a year to fund housing, infrastructure and startups. Latest Tigers.
Yeah, hi there. Always interesting. So that autism debate, the numbers have simply gone off the dial. I mean, it is unbelievable. It is true that women have previously not thought to suffer from autism, right? Really. And now it's discovered that they're enormously clever. They hide it. And so there's a whole load of, an entire sex has now come into the numbers. But honestly, I would think if you took the money out, my suspicion is that the numbers would collapse. Now, call me old-fashioned, but let's just check that. Now, I'm joined now by somebody I always like having here, mainly because despite the fact she's only 7, she's got a huge kind of political brain. And it's Sophie Corcoran. How are you, Sophie?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, what is aggravating you right now?
So I think the biggest thing that's aggravating me right now is that Jason Arde case from Cambridge, because we've had this discussion before, Kelvin, about how, do you remember I told you about my sister who got rejected from Oxford with 3 A stars and someone got in, a black person got in on ABB? This is exactly what happens when you do that. There are people like him. And I've always wondered, when I've obviously taken this court case out, I've made it my life's mission to fight against DEI. And a lot of people come to me, oh, you're racist. I've had a lot of consequences for doing this court case. And I always wonder to myself, why are people...
Would you like to explain to viewers who aren't as as up to date with what's happening as you are. What court case did you action?
So I am taking the black interns, the CPS, which is a new development actually. We've added them into
What is the CPS? What's it
the Crown Prosecution Service,
Right.
and of course the Bar Council to court over their black-only internship schemes. So they're essentially schemes that say you can only apply for this massively advantageous internship that will give you a massive leg up if you want a legal career, if you're black.
Right.
And I
When was that brought in?
That was, I think it was last November, so that's when we began our case. Obviously, they take a rather long time. We went through the ACAS process and now going towards an employment tribunal. And I'm suing them for discrimination against white people, as I rightly should, because in no other job, well, actually, we've got many other jobs, but you would never have a job where you say you can only apply for this job if you're white. So therefore, I will not accept in any way, shape or form a job that says you can only apply for it if you're black, because we get the circumstances that we find ourselves in here. And I've always wondered, how are people defending this? Because it's fundamentally racist and it's fundamentally wrong. And now we've got this case, and I realise actually why people defend this, because it's people like him that will defend this so robustly. And the reason why is because these people are absolute frauds to the very core. And their chances...
What, you're saying that the professor is a fraud?
A lot of these people that are defending DEI...
No, I'd have to draw the line.
Are chancers.
No,
and
let me just stop you there. Let me just stop you there. We don't know he's a fraud. We do know he's made claims which have turned out to be untrue.
Yeah. And
Cambridge themselves... By the way,
they would never get into this place where they were if they didn't go through this absolute cheating scandal that is DEI. These people have cheated their way through life on the back of people that belong to be there.
Let's try and calm down. The truth
You
about...
don't believe that these people have cheated the system?
No. I recognise that and he now does himself. He's made up a whole load of stuff, right?
Well, quite.
Right. I totally agree. It's wrong. But we have a process to go through, right? And as you well know, with processes, they can be quite difficult. So I'm not trying to be a liberal. Am I a liberal? Am I trying to avoid trouble? No, I am not. But I am saying to you, we want to try and calm down the language as we move through the argument. Okay?
You don't think
so
these
we're
people
saying
have
in this
cheated their way
case.
through life?
Pardon?
You don't think these people have cheated their way through life? I absolutely believe they have.
Right.
Because
you may believe in it. You may believe in it, but we could get ourselves into trouble if it turned out to be not true, right? So let's just try.
He is of the high standards to get into Cambridge that somebody else would get in there, or is there another reason that he's in there, which is DEI, of which these people use and abuse in order to get into positions that they don't deserve?
Right. So look, I've been through this before. He says that he ran 600 miles in 6 days.
That's not true.
He says he raised 5.5 million. He now says he didn't. He said he was a visiting professor at Ohio University. He wasn't. He said he was a visiting professor in Glasgow somewhere. He wasn't, right? The whole chunk of his PhD is word for word that somebody else had put together.
Quite.
Right.
So
These are shocking things. These are shocking things, and he has to stand up. And even worse now is that story where a journalist from the Times Educational Supplement, it was my rant this morning, puts the questions to him, and eventually the police investigate the journalist for harassment and then call him up and say, do you know this? You said, you must stop sending the questions because it's causing Professor Arday some kind of mental instability. It's a disgrace. But I'd just rather we actually dealt with the facts rather than making the generic. Sophie, I'm a big fan of yours. I just want it to be quieter, if we could possibly do that. Because I'm concerned. I'm here, on both. I have to butter my toast both sides. I know it's painful. Okay, so your suggestion is that there are black academics.
Yes.
Not just Professor Arday.
Not even just in academics, in every single institution in public life, in every single industry in public life. You know, this DEI thing has infected everything. You know, it's not just academia. Look at my case in the Bar Council. It's very realistic that you're going to end up with people like that.
How many people? How many black members of blacks have got into the, and browns, I presume, right, have gone into the legal world under this scheme so far?
Probably quite a significant amount, because this
100?
institution is called the 10,000 Black Interns, and they have just placed their 10,000th Black intern. So that is a lot of people.
Yeah.
And opportunities in the legal field for training contracts and internships are very, very scarce.
Tough.
They're very, very competitive.
Yeah, correct.
So people are getting in on what I think is almost a cheating way of the course. They don't have to compete with half of the population. You know, it's an easy way
Can
in.
I ask you this? Right, so you've gone down the ACAS route, which is normally a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
But
I think you have to go through that
Okay,
process.
so where are you going now?
To an employment tribunal.
Right, so both sides will appeal that, right?
Yes.
Whatever the verdict is.
Yeah.
Where does that go? Does it go to the Court of Appeal or Employment Tribunal 2, or what does happen to it?
I believe you can appeal it, but the reason why we're mostly doing this case is because we've got the ultimate solution is that I've written a private members bill with the KC to change parts of the law that I think may allow it to be legal.
Do you want to talk that through?
Yeah, so there's two parts of, there's two sort of segments in the Equalities Act that are essentially exemption clauses. So the Equality Act itself says you cannot discriminate X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But these clauses are put in there to say, apart from in these circumstances. And some of those clauses are rightfully allowed. So, for example, in acting, you know, if you're trying to cast Nelson Mandela, you're not going to want to cast a white person to play Nelson Mandela.
No, that's old thinking.
I suppose it is old thinking now, but those exemptions basically say, because otherwise you can turn around and say, well, he didn't cast me as Nelson Mandela because I'm white, this is racist. And that's in fact, like, you can't have a white Nelson Mandela.
Correct.
It destroys the story. So those clauses make common sense. The other clauses basically say that you can do this in circumstances of, you know, positive action. So the difficulty we have with this case is, what is positive action, and does this count as positive action or not? My personal view is that it doesn't. Positive action are those when employers say, oh, we encourage applicants from all range of backgrounds to apply, and potentially even help them with certain things like, you know, some employers say if you've got a neurodivergence, we'll give you an interview just because you may not be able to see you too great for your CV. But either way, they're subjected to the same hiring process essentially as everyone else. But this is positive discrimination, which is saying you cannot apply for this job if you are white. And that's a completely different thing. In our view, that's a completely different thing.
Can I ask you this then? Why on earth would the legal world, above all worlds, insist on that line? Why do they think it's a good idea? They must have known that it was A, controversial, possibly illegal, and generally get the backs up, possibly of the legal world anyway, but certainly of anybody who was politically active.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm the first person to ever take a case like this to court, and I don't quite know how long, because this DI thing has been going on for quite a long time. Just no one's ever been brave enough to challenge it, because it's essentially framed as, oh, we're doing the right thing, we're helping disadvantaged people, we're widening opportunities. You can't widen opportunities by denying a whole racial group the chance to apply, first of all. And secondly, it's because it just seems to be untouchable for a long time until now. But it makes no sense at all. So we're taking this to court, and basically what will happen is either if we win, and we prove it is positive discrimination, is therefore already illegal, I will then go to every single company that does this and say, I will sue you as well. So you better stop it. And they probably will. It will set a good precedence, and they probably will stop it to avoid getting sued. The other thing is that we prove the law is in fact racist, and that we change the law.
Fine. So, when does your case start?
So the employment tribunals have got a massive backlog, so I don't think it's until sort of later on next year.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I mean,
By which time, by the way, if there's 10,000 gone through already, right? It could be they might shovel through, not shovel through, but they might push through another 2,000 or 3,000.
Yep, a whole another year group of young white people being denied opportunity. And this is the problem. We've let it go on for too long, and I can't really let it go on for much longer.
Well, the thing I don't understand about your maths on this, you said this started last November.
It was before this. This was when I saw the scheme, so that's when I put
actually, that's when you took action.
Yeah.
How long has it been going? It must have been going for about 5-6 years.
Yeah, for sure. And so the 10,000 black internships don't just do people in law. They do people in all facets of life. It's, you know, MI6 have done this, the BBC have done this. There's a whole list of institutions, both public and private.
What about UK Live?
No, of course. Otherwise, I don't think any of us would be here, would we? But there's a whole list of institutions that engage in this.
But the only issue I have about that, of course, what I'm saying is I'd love there to be an active, big, black, brown, big personality, kind of somebody the Sophie of his community come on this station and have their own show. That would be fantastic. And the idea that there aren't natural conservatives or natural reform voters in those communities is for the birds. I mean, on the financial side, the cleverest people you're likely to meet in the UK right now are either Asian or Chinese or Hong Kong Chinese. I mean, the genius of Hong Kong Chinese people. Although, having said that, I was in the Weybridge branch of Waitrose. Something I don't normally.
Sounds very posh, Kelvin.
It is posh. Too posh for me. I asked a Chinese guy who was doing some of the stacking, young fella, right, bright looking guy. I said to him, "Do you know where the Ribena is?" Now that is not the most the toughest question you're likely to face all day. He said to me, "I can't do the voice because if I do the voice,
it's getting cancelled so fast."
I honestly. Well, I don't know why I shouldn't do the voice, but anyway, I'm not going to do the voice because if Sophie says I'm going to be cancelled, I can't imagine what the effect on me is going to be. Anyway, the guy says to me, I don't know what Ribena is. I not only don't know where it is, I have never heard of Ribena.
How are you working in Waitrose?
He was like 18, 20-year-old guy. He was stacking the shelves. Yep. Anyway, at the end of the day, I just went like that. I went around the corner, bumped into another lady, and I said, she said, no, it's he, actually. It was a he. He said, it's round over there, and took me around the corner. So I have no idea why I should say that. But look, my main point is UK Live would love to have somebody really out there, punchy, bang, boom, boom, bang, wallop, That's who we want. If they're black, brown, Chinese, doesn't really matter. I won't give a damn.
Hey, you've got a ginger here. That's diverse.
Exactly.
We're like the bottom of the bottom, to be quite honest with you. So this is ultimate diversity here.
But so we don't want to be forced to do it. No. But honestly, and I'm saying this, if anybody's out there who's really got it and really pumping, and they're as mad as me, you want to get them to contact Pooch because old Pooch is always looking for talent.
But we see
he's actually looking for his own talent most of the time.
DEI creates bad outcomes.
Yeah.
And we have to look at the fairness of the situation and the fact that, yes, he's in that position, but ultimately, if he wasn't in that position, somebody else would be. And that there is a more talented academic who could have got there on their own merit, their own hard work, their own experiences that are based in truth that should be in that position.
How's DEI going in India, by the way, in Bangladesh,
Pakistan, they don't have it. And this is what Burma. I get. Working in hospitality, this is the one thing that I've really seen, is that there are a lot in the industry as a whole. If you go to, and I've seen a lot of it on sort of social media, and you can tell me in the comments if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but you go to a shop and there's barely any staff that speak English. And I think to myself, I know so many young people that are applying for job after job after job after job, and they're in school and they want to do whatever they want, who are getting rejected from these jobs because they don't have experience. Meanwhile, I know someone that worked in hospitality that walked into a job having been here 1 week, coming from India, been here 1 week, had never had a job in India because a lot of the women and stuff don't work in India, they don't need a job, so she'd never have a job in India, can barely speak English to a successful level.
Let me guess. The job, though, came from an Indian owner.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And this is what happens.
So if you were running a shop and you gave it to a white person, is that it feels uncomfortable?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's you're allowed to do that.
Not really.
You don't think you are?
No, you should absolutely pick the people that are most reasonably qualified for the job. If you can't speak English, why on earth are you working in hospitality in this country?
Oh, so that lady couldn't speak English?
No, and you've never had a job before.
That is poor.
And we've got young people that have had jobs here or there, maybe had a paper round, maybe done this, who have got some sort of experience, who speak a reasonable level of English and who want opportunities, and this provides them the very first step to do that, who are getting rejected from job after job after job after job. And you go to a Popeyes somewhere and every single one of their workers is Asian and Indian, despite the fact that 0.2% of the local area is Indian, and you think, how on earth has this happened? And it's happening because of things like DEI. Nobody questions it when it comes to white people, but it's white people that are being cheated out of jobs that they rightfully deserve, and that's why we've got to stop it.
Well, that's a pretty compelling argument, that, Sophie.
I hope so.
Look, with your energy and with your political drive and behind you. Have you chosen to join any particular party, or are you going to remain a freelance in this area?
I'm quite remaining a freelance at the minute, as I just don't know what party has the best direction. I mean, I don't think it's really impossible to... I think politics in this country... There's two things about politics. Politics is very easy when you have principles. It is very, very, very difficult when you don't. And that's what's kind of happening in our politics at the moment. No one knows...
How do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Because if you know what you stand for, you know what you believe in, and you know the country that you want to create, it doesn't matter about any of the noise, any of the drama, any of the media circuses or anything like that, because you know that you're absolutely doing the right thing. We think of Margaret Thatcher. She was massively unpopular, but in the beginning, potentially more so. You know, she had very similar early, ratings to Liz Truss, to Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And we've got this problem where immediately these politicians are extremely unpopular and they just can't ride it out.
Yeah.
And that's because they actually don't fundamentally believe in and are willing to defend the decisions that are about to be made. Margaret Thatcher was massively unpopular, but she lasted, 13 years because she knew what she was doing was right for the country, no matter what anybody else said. And
Is that okay? Let me just raise a
thing.
question on that. I lived through those times. They were good times actually for the country, but very bad times actually for parts of the country which have never ever. They claim they've never they've never recovered. Liverpool and parts of the northwest and parts of the northeast. Down here in the south, because that money was generated by massive share sales in gas or BT or stuff like that, seem to be able to get through it a bit better. In today's world, with the online world and with phones, you could have a pretty big riot pretty quickly if you decided to stick to something which actually was shedding jobs, for instance. Yeah. Don't you think? Do you think that you're really comparing apples with apples?
I mean, look, you just have to look at the union protests, for example. I mean, some of those were just horrendously violent and massive. And yet she still survived because she knew what she believed in was right. And I think it's not difficult to, for my personal view, I think a party should stand for three things. And I think our politics should be dictated by three things. And that's quite simple. And it is family, freedom, and fairness. And I think fairness is the one that everybody else is getting wrong. Fairness is the one that I don't think a lot of politicians are getting right at the minute, because they believe fairness is giving every people what they want. I believe fairness is that if you're the best person for the job, you get the job no matter what. My personal view on fairness is that if you have a job, no matter if that job is working in a bank or cleaning toilets in a McDonald's, that you're going to be better off than somebody that doesn't. Yeah. But their view of fairness is that, people who don't work should be able to live as good as a life as somebody else. No, they shouldn't. They just shouldn't. Because that is not fundamentally fair. Their view of fairness is that...
that you fund somebody else so that if they don't go to work.
My entire argument on that is that young people are having to pay for somebody else to have free housing, mostly migrants, when we can't afford to move out of our parents' houses and we've got utterly no chance of doing so. We have to fund somebody with tennis elbow to get a free car or Motability when most of us are finding it impossible to even afford to learn how to drive. And the fact that we're having to go to work to pay an enormous amount of taxes to pay for somebody else to have a better standard of living than what we could ever dream of affording. And that is just fundamentally unfair. So I think that those three things, if you focus on family, putting your family first, the state shouldn't be governing young people. The state shouldn't be determining when young people go on their smartphones or what they do, or making sure that teachers are making sure your kids are brushing their teeth or all that. There is a job for family, and family should look after each other and your children, not just yourself, but young people should be looking after their parents. That's a big issue we have in social care, is that we're too easy as a generation to just throw our parents into care homes and this, that and the other. Whereas you don't see that in certain sections of community. They actually look after their parents. The community
that you're talking about actually doesn't exist in the white community.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But in ethnic communities, it does very well.
Does it?
So if you look at sort of Hindus, or even I lived in Peterborough for a long time, and there's very heavily Pakistani. Yeah. A lot of them all lived together, and they looked after their elderly relatives. They didn't have the massive expense of social care. So family is really important.
Noticed the sons and mothers were a lot closer as well than you get in. I mean, fortunately for me, my mother lived near me, and my brother and I would go and see her literally as regularly as we could, which would be at least 3 or 4 times a week, right? And there was a bond there, which has, with her death, actually, still exists.
Yeah.
And if you all live in different places and you have no families or stuff like that, the relationship with mum seems to completely break down.
Yeah. So I think family is really important, and the way that we promote family as being the most important thing for absolutely everything.
Yep.
Freedom, of course, is the government should just get out of our lives and stay out of our lives. I mean, I'd quite like to create the Leave Me the F Alone party. Would be quite a nice party to create. And the other one, of course, is the most important thing where we're going wrong in almost everything is fairness. Because their definition of fairness is A, fundamentally wrong, and B, they don't care about it. And it would solve a lot of the problems we have in this country if we just went back to things being fair.
Okay, you look at our country. I am slightly hopeful. I'm probably in a party of one on this. I'm slightly hopeful that the economy is going to do better over the next year or so. Right, we got it. Obviously, we got to get Iran sorted. On the basis that at some stage that does get sorted, I could see our economy growing, because one of our main issues is that people, your generation, are not wealthy enough.
No.
They haven't got the freedom. They can't say to their parents, I've got to go. For instance, I have a relative. She's at home. She's 24, 25. I hate being at home. That's all she ever says. I'm meeting my friends tomorrow. We're going to take a 4-bedroom house, and 6 of us are going to live there, and all girls or whatever. And I'm at last breaking out.
Yep.
But only by 6 of them getting together, really, and paying really for a 3 or 4-bedroom house are they ever going to be able to do this. That is not right.
No.
And that's because money hasn't been created, wealth hasn't been created, because we don't fundamentally believe in wealth creation. All I ever hear is some left-wing turd. And by the way, I take the Prime Minister into this as well. Somebody really trying to even up society. Society doesn't work like that,
no.
Right? Yeah, so there's some rich people. So what? There's some very rich people. Good,
yeah.
Right? Good. There are some poor people whom these very rich people are funding, right? They do. So I quite liked an article written by Jeremy Clarkson on Sunday, in which he said, I'd like the unemployed, right, as part
I remember this, yeah.
Right, the unemployed to be given at random the email of a working person, and that they every week write a note saying, "Dear whoever you are, thank you very much indeed for paying taxes from your work, from your pay, so that I don't have to go to work.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've taken your money and bought a very large telly." Right? your I thought that was a version of that there should be some gratefulness. It shouldn't just be, we're taking that and we're giving that. And that is where, there's somebody already said, I join Leave Me the F Alone party. So you've already, well done, Sophie. You've only been here 20 minutes and you've already set up your own party.
You're stand against Binface, let's go.
Yeah, I don't like Binface. I like it as a bit of fun, but I prefer your leave.
Oh, absolutely.
I used to like those other ones, the Up All Night Party and all those, some suggestion that there was some fun going on out there. That's another thing we need to talk about. When we talk about your age group, how old are you now, Sophie?
23.
23. I presume that despite your political views, you have friends.
Yes, many.
Okay, I'm sure you do.
They're all right-wing, though, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know.
They're all what?
They're all right-wing, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know.
Well, I am absolutely delighted. Bring them all in one day. Perhaps we'll have the Leave Me an Effing Loan party, right? annual meeting. Do you think that when you get together and you're talking about fun stuff, what is fun stuff for 23-year-olds now? Is it still going clubbing? Is it taking drugs? We might as well get down to the rub on all this. The idea, it's always that woman at number 18, she's the one that does it. Oh, really? Right. I used to think that about my own family, by the way. Mine don't do it. Anyway, so drugs, party, when they're having fun, what do they consider fun? What is fun for a 23-year-old?
Sadly, for my age now, I think fun is going to Tesco. I love going to big Tesco. Like, have you ever been on the shop to Big Ten? Oh, it's such a good experience. And like B&M home bargains. Oh, I love going to B&M.
I knew about B&M.
Do you know what I mean? It's just such a day out to go to B&M.
Okay, when I die, I want to put my clogs in Costco.
Oh, I love Costco.
Costco.
Oh, I love Costco.
Costco.
My mum wanted to go to Costco this week, and I said, Mum, but I don't have a Costco membership. I said, Mum, please, can I come with you?
Yeah.
I was begging her to let me go to Costco because I just love the hot dogs.
Well, there is the hot dog.
Yeah.
Now,
that is the one thing that I'm so proud of our country is that we have £1.50 hot dogs from Costco.
Well, I honestly,
good.
and okay, so there's two things. I love walking around it. Do you know what? I could buy most of that shop. Okay.
Yeah.
I get given a list. I have
Random
my own
Christmas
list.
tree.
What about? Have you seen the size of the marmalade? The
Yeah,
marmalade you can buy there.
Right. Costco.
My advice to you guys is become a commercial member at Costco's. I absolutely sure it doesn't save you one single penny.
No, but it's a great day out.
It's a great day out, and you will also get and by the way, another one there, Simon Guilford come on, fantastic hot dogs. Honestly, we're doing more. By the way, if Costco would just like to see me right there, that would be nice. Costco are the greatest. There is nobody I know.
I love Costco.
Do you know? Right. Do you know what? Well done.
I have a Costco right near me too.
Where? Oh, do you?
Yeah, I live in Thurrock in Essex, so we have a massive big Costco that's right next to a fat off B&Q. Mint day out. Best day out ever.
B&M.
And IKEA's around the corner. You could spend the whole day
I'm not
there.
going to IKEA. I'm not having anything Scandinavian. I'm not. Sophie, great to talk to you. Good luck with your battle.
You'll
be probably back next week, so I look forward to seeing you then. Okay, good luck with. Honestly, you're too bright. You're too bright for me. Right. Well, that was great, wasn't it, Sophie? She's great. By the way, she's been a bloody good guest today. Honestly, the fact that we don't pay anybody has improved the quality of the guest, because if you go on something like Sky or something, they want to give you 75 quid. The last time I was on the BBC, there was such a huge row that I got slung off it again. Anyway, super chat there. Quick tenner from Simon. I love Simon. Simon Guilford. That is so good of you, Simon. So good of you. You don't have to do it, but if you could do it more regularly, that'd be great. Right, coming up now, we've got Sean Walsh coming on. He's the writer. He's associate editor of Country Squires magazine. Hello, Sean. Do you know what?
How you doing, Kelvin? Why did you have to tell everyone we don't get paid? I've been blagging it. Like Jason Hardy.
Well, hold on a second. You don't get paid. I don't get paid. Don't worry about that.
You don't need it. You don't need the money, do you?
I go through periods. Okay, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Right. Sometimes I'm doing okay, and then sometimes it's not so good. Right. Now, I am told here on this here, I don't know about this, right, is that you've written a piece, Truth, Not Credentials, Sociology, Are They, and the Fraud Nobody Spotted. Now, Sophie has raised a bit of this. I've raised a bit of this. It's become serious, hasn't it? With Scotland Yard now basically telling a journalist a journalist who never caused a slighter problem in the whole of his life. It must be a very quiet life, right? Telling him that if you don't ask him any more questions because it damages his mental health. Honestly, Sean, tell me, what are we to do about that?
Okay, I'll probably follow the structure of the article if that's all right, and then
go on. You do that. You do that. That's fine.
I wrote that article. It was published yesterday morning when the full extent of the malfeasance of Cambridge University and the police and everyone else hadn't become quite as obvious as it is now. And one of the things I said at the start of the piece was to say, can we give Cambridge cut them a bit of slack, because after all, it's not the worst thing they've ever given us, because they gave us the spy ring in the 1930s, which nearly handed the whole country over to Joel Stalin. Now things have got. But the main point of the paper, the article, I did check with Charlotte it was okay to use the word bullshit.
Yeah, good.
Many years ago, before I decided to become an alcoholic and blew up my whole academic career, I taught philosophy. And there was a philosopher called Harry Frankfurt who wrote a little book called On Bullshit, which is a fantastic book. And in that book, he distinguishes between two types of dishonesty, lying versus faking. And he argues that faking is worse because the person who fakes has no conception of truth and will just say whatever they want to say in the moment to make themselves feel better or to get their own way. What we're dealing with in the Ardagh affair is slightly more serious than the ramifications for Cambridge University, and I'll explain why. You're dealing with the real scandal. There is no scandal that Jason Ardagh became a professor of sociology at the University of Cambridge, because that's exactly where he ought to be. Because you've got Ardagh, who is a complete faker, and you've got the discipline of social studies, the social sciences, sociology, anything with the word studies in, which are all fake academic disciplines. So it's entirely right that he should have got the job as a professor of sociology. I have no problem with that. I have a problem with those ways of thinking and those fake disciplines, which have infected the whole of the culture. You even see it now. These are academic disciplines which are not concerned with truth. They are concerned with compelling people to think in certain ways that have nothing to do with truth. They pretend to be science, but they're just jargon-based. And they've largely got their own way in the last 30 or 40 years. They've taken over the academy, and they've taken over all the other structures of the state, basically. So that's the real problem here. It's not that Jason Ardagh is not a one-off. Jason Ardagh is an avatar for ways of thinking which have infected the whole of the culture. And sociology, I'm afraid, is exemplary in regard of bad ways of thinking. So that's kind of what I was saying in the article.
Right, it's an interesting argument. So you're now Gruppenführer at Cambridge, who are causing themselves, I think, a lot of damage, actually, to be honest, by refusing to do something quite natural, which is to say, look, mate, we don't know about all this, but a lot of it looks very dodgy to us. I'd like you to stand aside for a while. You announce your own stepping down and whatever. But so what does sociology do? Look, I didn't realize you had an academic background, but what does it actually do? So if I'm a student and I'm a sociology student, what am I going to learn?
You are going to learn how to replace the normal language of human interaction with an allegedly scientific jargon. It's a pseudoscience. It's a way of looking at the society in general and culture as if from the perspective of a specific science, but it's not falsifiable. It's not interested in truth. Look at the way they've reacted to this scandal, the relevant people, the sociologists and the other academics. A scientist would say, okay, well, how does science work, Kelvin? It works like this. You make a mistake, you accept the mistake, you adjust your theory to take account of the mistake. What are these people doing when they've been rumbled about the Vardy thing, or whatever his name is? They're doubling down, they're refusing to admit a mistake, and they're reaching for the normal categories of race, identity, autism now, and that's not science. That's not so. So the brief answer to your question, what will you learn from sociology, is nothing worthwhile, but you will learn how to look at the way society is set up and be skeptical about everything and want to change everything. So, okay, and when you say, so I'm a student at the end of 3 years of listening to probably quite interesting debates about ethereal matters, right? Is any of it actually science-based or numbers-based, or is it a thought process which you either accept or you don't? I'm being very broad brush because of the time constraints. So people, and I've had some pushback on the article for people are saying I've been too general, and I'm afraid I have been. There are some decent sociologists out there. Certainly when the discipline was formed by people like Max Weber, it had interesting things to say. Specifically with regard to science, the two most interesting philosophers of science of the last 100 years were a mad Austrian called Paul Feyerabend and a guy called Thomas Kuhn. And they were basically sociologists, stroke philosophers. Sociology used to kind of interact with other disciplines in critical and interesting ways. It doesn't. It's free floating now. And it's just basically a way of getting people to think in certain ways, which are always left-wing. If I can put it like this, it's left-wing activism masquerading as scholarship.
Good line there. Right. So I've done my 3 years. I've got a 2-1. Yeah. I've got a 2-1.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got my 2-1, right? Okay. In fact, I got my 2-1 when I walked in through the door, but I've got my 2-1.
By repeating but it's kind of like it's like the casting of spells. It's like secular magic, these disciplines. You learn to say certain words to say them in the right kind of order and at the right kind of time, and providing you can operate within that kind of semantic context all the time, you will do well. Kelvin, you might even get a first. You might even get a first in it because you're a bright guy. You know how.
I'll take that. I've got a first,
Yeah.
and then I
It's
throw myself on the job market.
Yeah.
Who hires me and why?
Probably other universities, or the civil service, or now the college. You could go straight in as a superintendent now in the police force with a decent degree in sociology, because you're thinking about things in exactly the right way. Now, I sound flippant, but it's very serious, because that's what happened with Paul Henry Novak. Is that kind of way of thinking has bled out into the wider culture, and it's having consequences for all of us. So this our day thing is serious, yeah, but it's not. It's deeper than it appears, because it is symptomatic of a culture, and certainly in academia, that has gone wrong and has consequences for all of us.
Okay, so if we take the argument on now, sociology is not as popular as it was in kind of the 70s or the 80s or whatever. So courses go in and out of fashion.
Yeah.
There's going to be less of that kind of stuff and more about how to break rocks and build houses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Will that make students more hireable? And will people who in their 50s now, who've got sociology degrees, be working out whether they're going to enjoy driving a Waitrose van? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do see what you mean. Certainly they would be more hireable. The problem is they will still be interacting with a state which has inherited these ways of thinking. A lot of the identity stuff that we have to deal with now, the transgender. I think of sociology as being like the kind of academic. There's a kind of metaphor here. It's like the academic equivalent of transsexualism or the transgender stuff. It's like, just as men try to pretend to be women, sociology is trying to pretend to be an academic discipline, and no one has actually grabbed it by the throat and said, "You're not. Grow up and start thinking properly."
If I went to in any of the major universities, what percentage of their courses would today be sociology? I totally accept your argument that the academics themselves may have well come through the sociology route, but the universities aren't daft. They've got to bring people in a different way than they did even perhaps a year ago. So would it be 5% of the courses?
Which is why my argument isn't with the institutions necessarily. It's with the subjects and the people who promulgate the subjects. But you've not just got sociology. You've got anything with studies in the title. So you've got women's studies, you've got media studies, you've got gender studies. Media studies, that might be a bit harsh.
No, you're right. No, you're right about that. Nobody needs to do media studies. Honestly, media is a job anybody can do at 18, and they get trained up properly. When they come out at 21, they'll have no debt, and they will have 3 years experience, and they'll stand a very good chance of getting a decent pay rise, which is what they didn't do in the 3 years before, because that was called virtually an apprenticeship. Let me answer your question. We're going back to that.
Yeah, let me answer your question in a slightly negative way. Then it's something I say in the article. Can you imagine if, on the basis of his previous career playing baseball alongside Babe Ruth or playing with the Beatles or whatever else it says on his CV, he managed to blag his way, this guy, into the maths department, right? He's blagged his way into the maths department.
Yeah.
Now, he'd last, 5 minutes, because it's a serious discipline, before he got booted out. Or if he did happen to start writing papers in mathematics that contradicted previous proofs of Fermat's theorem or stuff on quantum mechanics or whatever, if he didn't, his CV wouldn't matter. The fact that he'd faked it wouldn't matter, because that's a serious discipline. But the real scandal here is that there are so many fake disciplines in our academic institutions which are releasing graduates into positions of not necessarily prominence, but of influence at local government level. All your special advisors have studied the same thing at Oxford, which is just as bad for this. So they are affecting everything, and it's habits of thought. It's habits of thought which are ordered not to truth but to power. These people are power seekers, and it's predicated on a familiar leftist playbook. Wasn't always the case when the discipline was founded, but like all the other institutions, it's been taken over by people who are acting in bad faith. And I think here's one way that the sociologists could, or a clever sociologist could rescue the situation here. There must be an interesting sociological paper available to be written on how it is that all these people were taken in by this guy.
There is a simple answer to that. So Cambridge refused to have an investigation of any kind. In fact, come out all guns blazing. I mean, they look bloody fools. Very devaluing for Cambridge, by the way. There's one answer. You don't need to be a genius. That guy's a white guy. Boom, he's gone. Okay.
There is that. Yeah, there's no denying the DEI side to that.
And the DEI plays a big role in this. Cambridge want to be seen on the right side of that argument. They say we're going to use Burnham's favourite expression. I'm going to expend a lot of political capital on this, right?
But Kelvin, the whole DEI stuff is traceable back to these courses from 30 or 40 years ago. These habits of thinking, that's where DEI came from. Okay, we imported a lot of it as well, but it's just these ways of thinking that are bad and are not ordered in the direction of truth, but in the direction of activism.
Right. Sean, thank you very much indeed. Every time you write something, just call up Charlotte and say, I've got something to say, and then we can start a decent debate. I love talking to you, man. Very good to see you.
Oh, cheers, Kelvin. Thanks a lot.
Cheers,
thanks for having me, man.
Cheers, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that actually wraps up a very quick couple of hours and a very interesting, the most interesting, look, Sean's interesting because he comes at things from a very kind of academic matter. I thought Sophie Cochrane was interesting. I mean, there's stuffs about her which make her a fascinating, driven individual. Dr. Dean Eggett, right? He's unused to the TV and all the rest of it, but he made his point. You know, in the 60s, it was 4 in 10,000 had autism. Today, it's 1 in 57. It's a racket, and it's being driven by the PIP payment, okay? You can make some pretty good money, certainly more money than by claiming that you haven't got autism, that's for sure. Rosie Shepherd, I thought Rosie always makes a good point, very determined. She's fighting for her sister. Her sister was killed by a drunken oaf who drove his car and then drove it on. He got 8 years. And with a bit of luck, he'll be kept in longer than she thinks, and thanks to her. And then we come to Lawrence Fox. And the interesting thing about Lawrence Fox was we saw a different Lawrence Fox. He's normally very punchy, shouty, intellectually arrogant, wants to actually destroy everybody in an argument. Suddenly we're seeing a different Lawrence Fox. That Lawrence Fox will get votes. That Lawrence Fox will be on everybody's dance card. It was very interesting, fascinating. See you guys tomorrow.